Hey everyone, we're here with Jama Jurabaev. I think it's Jurabaev, right?
Yes, you got it right.
Okay,
It's the writing.
we're here for the Proko Ukraine fundraiser. We've been doing streams all week to raise funds for the humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. So, feeding kids, helping refugees, helping hospitals out, that sort of thing. And right now we have Jama here to show us some art, ZBrush, and kind of what he does.
Is a concept artist Lucasfilm. So I just love making art, I guess. And there's not much to tell, not much else to say about it. Yeah, so today what I wanted to do, actually, there is a Ukrainian sculpting program called 3D Code, and they're actually friends of mine. I hope they are friends of mine because I've met them a few times. So I would love I would love to show you some stuff I've been doing in it, and obviously whatever you can donate will directly actually help their country, which is obviously super cool as well. So how do I do that? Do I just share the screen?
I guess so. I think so. Yeah, I think no matter what, it's gonna be cool. Yes, Milbert. This is no, this is not pre-recorded. This is live.
Okay, here we go. Do you see my screen?
I do not. I see a slideshow of something. Oh wait. Okay, I see it now. I see your screen.
It's coming, right? Cool.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. So okay, let me just go to my ArtStation, just kind of brief review of what I've been doing lately. Like again, on my ArtStation, there's tons of different things. I've been working on a bunch of movies and stuff like that. But like since I was a kid, I had this passion for sculpting. I don't know. This was something I actually started from. Like when I was a kid, I would have like a chunk of clay and I would sculpt little things here and there. Obviously, they never looked professional, but I remember really enjoying them. And then obviously what happened like with my career and later on, like I was completely busy with something completely different. But at some point I came back to art, but I mainly came back to sort of drawing and painting part of it. So I was originally like 2D artist. So this is where I started from. And you can see I still love 2D. Don't get me wrong. Like it's not like I swapped the career for 3D or sculpting. It's just something I have this natural curiosity. I love trying different things, trying different tools, and experimenting and stuff like that. And eventually, like I always felt like working on the projects, I never had enough time to sculpt. Like for example, I worked on Jurassic World, the second one, and I did a lot of sculpting. But usually, my sculpting is always very rough. Like I tend to approach it first as a painter. Like I paint and draw faster than I sculpt. But then obviously when you work on the projects, they would always ask you to do like a refined version of things. And like for example, this is probably the sculpt sort of level I would do on projects. And I always felt like, damn, I wish I had a little bit more time. So basically what happened a couple of years ago, I took some time off from my projects and I went like, I need to concentrate on sculpting. I would love to just do this because it's been always been my passion and I never had enough time to do that. So this is like, and you can see that like on my ArtStation, like I've been doing a lot of like 2D, 3D, 2D, 3D, and painting, drawing, and then all of a sudden I started doing a lot of sculptures. So yeah, and I had a lot of fun. So I've been playing with different tools. Again, I'm always trying to be very open-minded in terms of how I approach things. I tend to have this. I love basically trying different options and seeing what are the strengths and possibilities of each program. Because again, I strongly believe there's no perfect program in the world. There's always smart people who come up with this really cool tools. So it would be a shame not to. So these are the first experiments I've done. These are actually these were all done in VR. So I was using Oculus VR headset, and these were done in Medium. Back in the days, it used to be Oculus Medium. Now it's Adobe Medium. I had a lot of fun. It very reminded me of what I was doing when I was a kid, just really picking up a chunk of clay and basically sculpting it up. So there's like almost no restrictions. It's pure freedom. I really had tons of fun with that. The only problem I had in VR, which I don't extensively use these days, like you need a headset on your head, it's a great it's a great tool. However, like the tech needs a little bit more time to. It's a right approach. I would say it's a perfect approach because the way you do the sculptures, as I mentioned, you literally like push around clay in 3D space. However, the headset itself, it's quite clunky and it just presses against your face. So I'll just wait. And I'm getting older with I'm not getting younger, I would say. That's why I decided not to risk my own health. So I'll wait till the tool gets right. The headset becomes better, and then I'll probably jump back on board. Yeah, and then there's all obviously done in VR. And also at some point when I came back to sculpting, I was like, why all the sculptures? Most of the sculptures I would say these days they look like gray, just like CG kind of render. So this is where I started developing my clay shader. And basically I came up with this technique where I could like project like a hand sculpted texture on top of a on top of a simple geometry. I wouldn't say simple, but at least not as detailed. And you can see like all this stuff. It does look like it's been made out of clay, but it's actually not. It's a CG render, as you can see. Like obviously because and this eventually opens like the idea here wasn't like, oh, let me just make a digital render to make look like a clay. The idea here was like, how can I make it look traditional but make something that wouldn't be possible in traditional media. And as you can see, like for example, in this example of this eagle trying to grab this rabbit, like traditionally it would be impossible to make, isn't, unless you have some sort of like supports, but with CG you can do whatever you want and it looks traditional. That's why I felt that contrast is very, very interesting. But I kept experimenting. So basically, like I tried every possible app out there. Obviously ZBrush is quite popular. I did some stuff in ZBrush. I did some stuff in Blender, and then eventually, like I started using 3D Code, which I used to use a lot. But 3D Code used to be not as fast as ZBrush, which was always concerning to me. But these days, 3D Code is just fantastic, and you can actually see the icon here is this Ukrainian flag, which is obviously emphasizes these guys being from Ukraine. Yeah, there's tons of stuff. If you want to check it out, like if you can go to my website on ArtStation and you can check out all the sculptures. Let me just quickly swap the 3D Code sculpture. So all this stuff, like all the stuff that you've seen here, they were done in VR, right? And I can show you the shader I was talking about. Like for example, you can see that, for example, without the shader, these models look like this. They're not bad, but they're very smooth. But with shader, it gives you like a very kind of really nice tactile feel. Same here. Like for example, this model was done in 3D Code, but it doesn't have all the necessary detail that I wanted and project in those textures. This monkey is also a good example of that and stuff like that. But then what happened? I had a break, so I don't remember what exactly. I think I started working on a job, so I didn't sculpt for a while. And also, like I I kind of decided to take a break from VR purely like it would really have a negative effect on my eyes. And in the meantime, I worked on some movies. You might have seen Mandalorian and stuff like that. And but then I came back to this one. So again, this is one of the things that I kind of. It's not like I like in myself. I often hate myself for that, but I don't like leaving things half baked. I try to make sure like I spend enough time on focusing on something, and it would be a shame if I just left it over here and not work on it. Since I had time, I came back. But this time I decided, okay, I'm gonna purely focus on a desktop application with no VR. And obviously, again, as I mentioned to you, I played with ZBrush, I played with Blender, I played with 3D Code, and 3D Code kind of has this mindset which really fits the way I think. And again, when I say things like this, it's not like I think 3D Code is better than that or ZBrush is better than that. I always try to avoid saying things like this because, as I mentioned, each program is made by very smart people. But what I wanted to find this tool that fits me, and fits the way I work. And obviously, it does certain things which are better working like which are kind of closer to my mindset. So yeah, and I started doing this kind of like interesting experiments and then combining all the stuff that I've done with my clay shaders, and just pulling off that look that I was after. I really like, and the other reason why I really wanted to have my stuff look like a sketch, like a clay, because I really wanted, as a concept artist, like most of the time I don't have time to make like a fully fleshed out a really nice model. Like usually what my clients are looking for is the idea, is the design, is sort of And making it look like a clay is a very conscious choice, because I really wanted this to be seen as a sketch without any kind. Nobody, like, looking, if someone looking at this image, no one would obviously say why this guy looks gray with no textures, because it's kind of obvious that this is just a sketch, right? As it was a very, very conscious choice. Yeah, and then obviously slowly I started playing with different things. Also, another thing I love about, like, when I draw and paint, I love how you can simplify things. Like, for example, if you look carefully at some of those details, like like I can open this, yeah. Like, if you look how I did the hand, it's actually very simple, isn't it? Like, it does have all the right sort of gesture that which I was after, but obviously it doesn't have all the nails and all the kind of skin details, but it works, you know. And I'm a big believer in gesture, because I think gesture is what makes your what creates that energy, and kind of you can get away with a good gesture, but if your gesture is not good, not no matter how many details you have on top, it still will look very stiff. At least this is my personal opinion. And again, I'll show you later on how I did some of those things. But 3D Coder is the kind of the tool that gives you this ability to almost draw, but make it in a sculpting mode. And this is just really, really fascinating. Yeah, you can see like all those little things that I'm having here. They are all basically like following the same idea. How can I make it look like a detailed thing, but then focus on the gesture and the main design of this sculpture? I think this one is one of the most recent ones I did, and you can see this is again following the same sort of idea. You know, just how can I make it detailed? Like, if you look all the wrinkles, it looks like it's made out of clay, you know, but actually it's all CG. Yeah, and then over here you can see tons of different things that I've done. Yeah, this is like a small portion of it. Like, I will show you later. I kind of like I'm a strong believer that talent is great, but I don't think I have a good amount of talent. I might have a tendency to do certain things, but the rest of it is just hard work and practice. You know, this is something as an artist, like I saw this formula work repeatedly. You know, like when you having just a talent, a tendency to do certain things does allow you to do certain things faster, maybe, and learn faster, but without being backed up by a good amount of practice, that would be probably impossible. So for example, I have this daily folder. I might show you in a second, like some of the experiments I've been doing, but basically, like right now, like my goal is to get really good at sculpting, and I know the only way to do that is practice, and obviously study and practice and repeat, rinse and repeat. And I do see the improvement, you know, like each time I start sculpting these things, like I feel like, oh, I'm learning something. Again, there would be days where I suck. I just like hate myself. Why am I not doing anything valuable, anything cool looking? But I guess that's part of the process, you know. Like sometimes you fail, but in the end, you get somewhere. Let me see if I have any other sculptures. If not, we're gonna jump into. No, that was the last one. I have a lot of like things work in progress, but obviously haven't finished them yet. So let me show you some free code then. So yeah, basically this is one of the most recent ones I'm working. I'm still working on it. It's just not finished. But again, like I mentioned to you, coming from a 2D background, I really like. I think I learned more about sculpting by looking at painters and at people who draw. Like, for example, I learned a lot from Bridgman. You know, the way he simplifies forms, it really allows me to kind of focus on the main sort of gestural aspect of it. And you can see, like, for example, this hand over here, it kind of looks pretty cool from a distance, but when you zoom in, you can see it's actually very blocky. You see, it's actually uh, not super finished. And this is pretty much reminds me of my drawings and paintings. Like, if I would pull up some of my drawings, you can see. If only I can find those though. You can see, like, I'm pretty much using the same thing. Yeah, this is a bunch of my drawings here. So you can see how I love like leaving things a little bit obscured. I love the movement and maybe not refining certain areas too much. I'm a big fan of motion. I love to make things look dynamic, and that's like the more details you put on top, the less kind of. It's not like you can still maintain the energy, but the gestural aspect of it, it's what I really love, and I'm kind of trying to make sure I'm following. I'm doing that in 3D as well. And over here you can see like it does look pretty cool with all the veins and stuff like that. It's some folded skin, but obviously from a distance it looks cool. On a close-up, not much. And again, this is still work in progress. You see, I need to go and refine all the muscles. I really want this guy to look very, very textural. Look, for example, at the eyes. Like, there's no eyes, right? Like, oh wow, there's no eyes. But again, I'm always thinking about the sculpting in terms of shapes and forms. Like specifically, like if I go and show you the lighting mode, oh, you see, all of a sudden, it actually looks like he actually has eyes. This like the shadow, the way shadow kind of works with it. It almost gives you a hint that there's something going on. But obviously, as you saw in the normal preview, that I didn't even sculpt the eyes. So yeah, and that's very similar to what I was showing to you earlier. With drawings, like you create like a sense of like an illusion of detail without actually sculpting it. It's very interesting. That's what I'm exploring. I'm trying to find more about. Cool. Let me actually show you. Like maybe I'll do a quick demo. And guys, in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Yeah.
Usually the demos are very boring because you have to click on buttons, but I'll try to make it as fun as possible. But
Yeah. I'm reading chat, by the way, for anyone that has questions.
Yeah. So,
go ahead.
Yeah. So this is basically how everything starts. It starts from the sphere. But look, there's a very tiny difference which I specifically on purpose made. Like I think if you get the original default 3D code, the original texture on this one would be something like this. It's like something you would probably familiar from ZBrush or something like that. It's a very like kind of gray sort of matte gap, which is fantastic. However, what I really wanted to sort of see from the very beginning is the sketch aspect of it. That's why like I specifically created. You can see here I have a bunch of shaders which are basically these clay shaders. Like 3D Code has this fantastic BPR material shader kind of system where you can basically like what you were seeing in over here, which is just final render. Very close to it, you can like, for example, if you look at this shader, it's pretty much this, just like a little bit nicely rendered. And actually, the guys from Pretty Code really loved it, and they asked me if I can make one for them. And if you actually download the default 3D Code, they have this Jama clay folder. This Jama, it's only my own folder, but you also have this Jama clay, which basically has the same clay material. Which is I was very happy to share that, so because I think it's a very nice way to start sculpting. Yeah, and then let's talk about tools. Actually, there is this major difference which I think which I believe makes 3D Code very unique tool. Like unlike ZBrush, 3D Code uses volumes, not volume, voxels, which basically means like you don't need a surface to draw. Like if I start sculpting on it, you can see what I mean. Like it does this, you see, and especially like if I swap to a different tool, like for example, if I do this and if I scroll somewhere else, you can basically create geometry out of nowhere. And this opens a lot of different possibilities because like you can do some stuff of it. Like again, like it's not like you can't do this in ZBrush. You can. However, in Pretty Code, it's natural. It's because voxels could be stretched and extended beyond the sort of existing geometry. Like for example, of course, 3D Code does have surface mode. Like over here, you see the little letter, which basically right now it means it's in volume mode. Surface mode has its own advantages, but obviously volume mode gives you this ability to do things like this. You can cut holes, and then when you stretch stuff over like you don't get this stretching, like it kind of voxelizes and retopologizes as you go. So that is the kind of the first major difference, and that's the difference which I think opens new possibilities. Like a lot of times I get like ZBrush artists asking me about 3D code, like, and then unfortunately they kind of try approach it in a ZBrush way, and I always question, like, if you're gonna use it as ZBrush, why do you need 3D code? So that's why, like, I had the same thing in Blender versus Maya, Blender versus 3ds Max. Like, back in the days I used to teach Blender, and I always would say, if you're gonna use Blender, make sure you don't approach it as your experience with Maya, because otherwise, why are you swapping the tools? Just use whatever you know. Same thing with 3D code. Like, if you want to kind of explore it, I definitely encourage you to try this. Well, now let's do like a little sample here, a little example here, right? I told you, like, for example, that I actually approach 3D code as a almost like a drawing tool, and everything I do. Let's, like, for example, make like a quick character here. Like, even the way I do characters, I almost learned, like I told you, I learned so much from like Bridgman, and like if you have a chance to read Bridgman books, like I was looking at the way he makes like facial features, and he constructs the skull, like I would say the head of a character. He does pretty much this. So the first step would be just to do this, and then he actually draws like extrudes. So if I would go and do this, let's just do that. Yeah. So he actually has something like this, and there is a nose like that. Okay, this doesn't look good yet, but what is really cool about this approach, it lets you to get the shapes right. Like, it almost forces you to simplify things and think purely in terms of like volumes, instead of straight away diving into kind of detailing this thing and just getting some like facial features. I'm thinking purely in terms of structural aspects of it. The bone behind it, the bones and all this stuff. And then, for example, like I can give it the mouth like this, and then over here I can do that. And look, this is looking like like straight away looking a little bit like a comic book character, right? Like it has like a very defined facial features, uh, and this allows me to be very, in a way, I'm stylizing this from the very beginning, because I want to be able to experiment with the proportions, and like, I'm not just sculpting a human sort of head. I'm trying to, in a way, design it as I go, and because I'm like, I can just draw things on the surface. Yeah. So this guy is slowly getting there. Again, it's not close or perfect, but at least it gives me some nice. I can do this. So this guy, good. Again, let's just do a little bit of this.
I have some questions from chat.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you do any client work in 3D Code, or is it primarily for personal work?
Oh no, I do a lot of client work in 3D Cut. Yes. So imagine if I had to do the same, like a character work for a client, I would totally just start in 3D Code.
Is it possible to export a model from 3D Code with these texture materials to render in other programs?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, in 3D Code, they have this very nice thing. Like, we can possibly show it. I can show it a bit later. But basically, like in 3D Code, like whatever you see here, you can export it in one click. Like, you can click on export, decimate, automap, and export. What it will do, it would not only export this model, but it also will export, decimate it, retopologize, reproject the normals, recreate the normals and displacements. It's basically going to make you a game ready asset. The UVs are not perfect, but at least like it will be very low poly with all the details, and all this texture work, it will be exported as well. this is like, for me, especially as a concept artist, this is so valuable because like normally, like you can sculpt a very high res model, but then obviously what you need to do, you need to go back to retopo and all that boring stuff. Like personally, I never enjoyed doing that. So 3D Code does that very well. Okay, in the meantime, let me just like go ahead and refine this guy. And this is where, again, like when I do these demos, a lot of times people say, "Oh, you can do this in ZBrush as well." Well, guys, I never mentioned this is only 3D Code exclusive. However, there are certain things that 3D Code does much better. Like for example, let's say if I want to have ears, right? Like if you were in ZBrush, you will have to like either create a new geometry or mask it out. Because in 3D Code you can draw, like I can literally just draw the ears, right? So you see, and now all of a sudden I have this guy has ears, right? So just super cool. Yeah, let's just go and refine this guy a little bit more. Obviously, let's do the eyes.
Let me know when you're ready for another question.
I'm always ready. I keep doing this.
Okay. I'll just throw them out. I'll just throw them out there to you, and then whenever they pop up.
Yeah.
Any estimate on when your Unreal tutorial will come out? A couple people asked that.
Unreal tutorial. I'm working on that. Yeah, Unreal tutorial is something I've been working on for a while. I don't have a date set yet, but it's definitely coming. 100.
Yeah. How do you approach the fact that you use a tablet to sculpt instead of your hands?
Well, I guess obviously this is a different. You gotta sort of like 3D, like VR sculpting was very close to what you normally do with your hands. You know, you literally like move them around and stuff like that. But again, you just get used to it. You know, like that's the reason why digital has its own kind of strengths. Traditional media has its own strengths. You know, I wouldn't compare them. I would just take advantages. Like this tools gives you certain edge over traditional media. You know, you can do this and that. But again, with any software, basically, I would say, okay, this is where this software is good at, right? And I try to capitalize on that rather than try to make it look like something else. You know, otherwise it just becomes gimmicky. You know, I tend to make sure like whatever I'm using, there is a solid reason behind that, and wouldn't basically compare them to each other.
Cool. Can you talk about your relationship with Marshall? Marshall, sorry.
With Marshall. Nice. Well, Marshall used to be my teacher. So originally I'm from Tajikistan. So this is where I started my career. And if you never heard of it, it's like a little country in post-Soviet sort of region. And I was accepted as a student to this school, which was called the art department. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a fantastic school because for me it was a first real experience, because like I had an engineering background and I really loved art, you know, and I started like doing art later in my 20s, in my mid 20s, and I was always lacking this kind of environment where I can learn from other people. And I was very, very happy that I was accepted to that school, and Marshall turned out to be one of my teachers. And I'm so happy that I had Marshall because he's
Cool. Do you recommend using any texture brushes for starting out in 3D Code?
Yeah. So with texture brushes, like a lot of times people, like I get people telling me, "Oh, your stuff looks very textural, but looks very handmade and stuff like that." I don't think like intentionally I do this. Like I sculpt with texture brush, as you can see right now. Is it textured? It's not. However, it's very stylized. You know, you see like how I'm really following and making sure all the facial features, maybe they are slightly exaggerated, but that's totally fine. It's always easier to knock it back rather to have it stiff and try to introduce some of those like shapes. But then we'll get into textural elements a little bit later. But basically, one of the reasons why it looks quite textural is the fact that I'm using this voxel sort of aspect of it. And for example, one of the brushes I use a lot is this toothpaste. So what toothpaste does, it overlays this almost like a chunk of clay. So for toothpaste, you don't need. It could be like creating this very interesting hangovers. This is something that you normally don't get in surface mode in ZBrush. I mean, potentially you can, but it's just 3D coded does it so much better. Because you literally like what you're doing, like you're overlaying chunks of clay, and that creates this impression of being like very, very textural. Again, you can go like very thick, and then it creates almost like the strip of clay. And obviously, you can set it on the new layer. And also, the other thing I like about 3D Code is that it's like Photoshop. If you know Photoshop, it's easy to work with. Like probably no one would deny that, but ZBrush has a very steep learning curve in terms of interface. But 3D Code has a very straightforward interface, and literally like this is layers that you have in Photoshop. You can swap them, you can merge them. Like for example, normally when I work, most of the time I work in full screen mode, like because I know I set up all my shortcuts accordingly. Like if I want a new layer, I press Control N, and you can see that the shortcut has. And yeah, and for example, now like I can overlay that extra geometry, and you see it looks like I'm overlaying the strips of that clay. And if I wanted to create this fancy mustache to this guy, I'm basically using those like clay strips, and that's what makes it look textural. I don't think like actually this is not the first time people ask me about this texture brushes, because if you look at my work, like if we go back to this guy, where was it? The one that was on the it is very, very, very textural, isn't it? But it's the result of me slowly chopping away and adding those details. Like the way I did the mustache was pretty much the way I did the things on that guy. Maybe I will probably upres it a little bit, and then maybe like I will go over with this one again and just start chopping away some things, and then more of that I do. But usually like I tend to keep everything quite low poly. I like often don't even zoom in, and this is the reason. Remember, like we started this conversation from me swapping the shader, which kind of might look a little bit weird. Why would I do that? But look, if I swap back to let me bring back this shader. Look, when you're looking at this model in this shader, it looks unfinished, doesn't it? It looks, oh, there is not much details, like everything. Like look at those jagged edges. Like if this was probably a ZBrush model, or if I was working it this way, I would probably go and start. Oh, look, there's like little bumps here and there. I need to refine those. Yeah, that's not the point, Like you can always fix that, but like I love like, and when you have this as this clay kind of look, you sort of, your brain goes like, oh, this is actually a sketch, and that's what I like about working in 3D code. The way you create things, like the way I created those ears, like I literally, like you saw me doing that, right? Like I literally was overlay, like drew it in 3D space, and then I can use the best of details. This guy almost like an MMA fighter with cauliflower ear or something like that.
Let's see. Hey Jama, stopped by ask you a question. Have you stopped using Blender? Or wait.
No, I use Blender on a daily basis. I would love to show you one thing I would doing in Blender, but a bit maybe later on. But yeah, so again, this process is more related to my personal sort of desire to learn sculpting and to do these things. But in terms of if I sculpt in Blender, I would probably say I stopped doing any sculpting in Blender just because those are not there yet. And again, don't get me wrong, I see some like fantastic people doing like crazy stuff in Blender. But I just, the way I approach this would be absolutely impossible to do in Blender, if that makes sense. Okay, cool. Let me show you another interesting thing. Like so right now, more or less, I'm kind of happy with the way this is going. Right, obviously, we need to open the eyes and the eye sockets and all that stuff. However, there's another cool thing that I do. For example, I want to, let's say this is like, this guy has some hair, right? But not like, maybe he's like semi-bald or something like that. And I want to create some hair. I still want to, in a way, to be able to stylize it. So one of the ways I can do that I can basically go and just literally draw it. You see, like I'm literally like drawing it, right? However, obviously then it looks a little bit too kind of spherical and a little bit it's almost like imagine if you were using Photoshop and you're just using the round brush. It's cool. You can still pull it up and make it look good. However, I want this to be stylized from a get-go, like so that's why like for example over here I have this things called splines. It's basically like what spline is like for example if I would pick up a brush and I pick up a profile, when you drag over it draws, like especially if I remove this, like oh it does this. Obviously the idea is right, however you don't have chains growing out of your head, correct? So we need to fix that. So I created the strips, which is basically like a imagine if you have a chunk of clay and you rolled it over into like thin stripe, right? That's pretty much what you do when you sculpt, like you take a piece of clay and you kind of like round it with your fingers, and but then it actually creates really cool things, like you can start like you see, and it does look like exactly like what I was talking about. If I had a chunk of clay and I would be just applying it, and again I can go smaller, bigger, and it's actually pretty different. I've got a bunch of them, so they're all slightly different. It really allows me to kind of keep this sensation of hair. But you know what? Like this guy, let's him just have this a little bit fancy haircut. Pure guy. He doesn't have any hair left, so he has this little thing. And then I can knock it back. Boom. And all of a sudden, again, look, is this possible to achieve this with that round brush? 100%. But I just felt this has this like really nice kind of, what do we call it? Just a nice kind of already nice stylized look, which I was after. And obviously afterwards you can move it around and do something like that. Cool. Let's now work with his eyes. And again, with for example, a lot of times I see with the eyes the way you would do, like you would bring in the sphere, like, and then you position it over here, which is kind of cool. It's not like I don't approach it like this because it gives you a very solid base, and then it makes sure the eye is perfectly round, so the eye socket reads very well. However, like I just drew it freehand, just like I showed you on that sort of. Um, on the first sculpture, like that character actually didn't have any eyes because I was constantly like when I'm sculpting this, I'm constantly checking with this like the rendered mode and I'm trying to make sure everything looks nice. Okay, yeah, I will probably just open up, let's activate that. So this.
Hey, what is your general workflow for characters? Do you use Marvelous Designer or other software for costumes, or do you prefer sculpting clothes? Thanks.
No, I just sculpt the clothes. I'll probably show you a little bit of that, but again, Marvelous is a fantastic tool. Don't get me wrong. I just never have time for it. Like you get fantastic results, and I know guys who are very fast with it. It's probably just me. I'm very slow. Like and that's why it's definitely not part of my workflow. Yeah. So yeah, now we kind of have the eyes. Again, they are not perfect. Like the thing with eyes, obviously, you need to make sure that they're kind of wrapping around the eye inside. Nice. And this is where I can go back again to the same thing, like I'm overlaying these chunks of clay. Like for example, if I want to reinforce the eyelids, you can sculpt all this stuff, but I literally like apply these chunks of this clay, which like 3D code allows me to do very well. And nice.
Let's see. Are there any resources/teachers that you'd recommend for learning 3D code?
Well, I hate to say this, but not many people are using 3D Code. You can find some really nice tutorials. I actually did a course on 3D Code a while ago, years ago, actually probably 8 or 7 years ago. But it was mainly focusing on the sort of hard surface aspect of it. What I'm showing to you right now is quite exclusive. I don't think I've shown this at companies I went to just as a demo, but right now you don't. I've never done this publicly anywhere, and I don't find this on YouTube. What I'm showing to you. Yeah, look, like again, like they see the way I treat dyes. It's not perfect, but again, I know this is gonna be looking pretty cool when I go to shaded mode. You see, like what you want to see. You want to see a little bit of that little kind of dark area, and that would be pretty sufficient for now. Okay, so let's maybe go and give this guy a little hat. Maybe he's a part of a gang or something like Picky Blinders. So see, there's some need to make this broader a little bit. Yeah, and like you can see, like I'm working relatively low res. This was 500,000 polygon. Maybe it's time to up-res it a little bit. So this gives me a bit more room to start refining some of
Question: how much during your work days do you spend on studying, or do you have some rules about how to be both effective time-wise?
Well, it depends. Usually, like I tend to do studies in the morning. For some reason, I feel very motivated. And also like it's just woke up. You need some time to kind of get things running. And I can show you, like for example, let me just actually save this guy. So, why is it? Yeah, you can see I have this daily folder. I actually did some sculpts today as well. So, and this is obviously I changed my computer. I had a different folder. So every day I kind of like open my computer and I do certain things. It's not always like I can actually show it to you, but it's not something like it's not super organized. Like I do different things. Sometimes I go like, oh, like this was it yesterday. I felt like let me sculpt a demon, right? Like so I did like this sculpture, right? And it's normally me just either thinking about something, but I would love, but I just kind of like set my mind free and I try to sculpt things. But then obviously occasionally I have like studies where I sit down and I kind of have the anatomy book in front of me and I go over things, try to understand how the things are built. For example, I do a lot of crochet stuff where I kind of try to decompose stuff. This is obviously not finished, but I was just trying. I think like in this one, I was studying how to make the clavicle. And again, I guess like that was a great question because like none of this stuff you can see on my website, and it could look from a distance. Oh, this guy has a natural talent to make this cool stuff, right? I might do, but obviously there's a lot of hard work. You can see like every day, like sometimes I do 5 6 sculpts a day. Some of them make sense, some of them don't. But again, I guess like what I do also, like I try different things. I try to understand how certain tools work and what can I do with those. And again, I do a lot of anatomy studies where I like specifically sit down and try to kind of understand the body structure, because again, like just like with drawing and painting, you need it's important to study. You can't just draw things out of your head. Like but I tend to swap those two. Like sometimes I go full on, what do you call it, I pull the reference up, but a lot of times I do stuff from imagination, because again, I'm a concept artist. I'm not a fine artist. I need to balance between those two things. I need to be able to create things from scratch, but I also need to be able to do imaginary stuff. That's why like I'm always trying to balance between this. I can show this one is actually quite, yeah, like with characters. I like I've done tons of these guys, like all like start with this one, then pull it off, like come up with a different guide. Again, I guess like the most challenging one is actually to sculpt characters, not just people, like not just regular human skeleton and all that stuff, but how can you play with the proportions? How can you make because that's what my clients are looking for when I'm working with them. You know, they want me to come up not just with a regular person, but just with something that has a cool character in it. I also do a lot of gesture studies. Let me show you, and maybe I can show you a little example of that. So if I click on that one, yeah, you can see over here, like I do a lot of stuff like this. Again, some of them are quite extreme, but you can see how like I'm really pushing this sense of movement. Like I'm not like the purpose of this exercise is not like refine everything and to make it look fantastic, but the purpose of this exercise is to make kind of these different explorations and gestural stuff, and it's interesting. So where is it? Oh yeah, like before I named this as a daily folder, I had so much stuff. Like you go here, you can see like I've been just doing random things. Yep, and this guy, what's this guy about? This is the same hand I had there. Yeah, like I like hands are so difficult, you know. Like I was trying to find a way to make a hand, like to kind of develop a very interesting hand sculpting technique. I should do that. Let me see if there's anything else interesting. Oh, look at this guy. He's awesome. Very angry dog. But yeah, like what I was showing to you with the previous example, like you can see this all the same things over here. You see like how I'm really focusing just on the character again. The stylization is actually, it looks very simple, but actually it's more difficult than making realistic characters, you know. Again, making realistic characters is difficult. However, like this is where you can, like with stylization and with the sort of design character work, you almost need to like create abstract shapes, make this guy look like look at it's you probably won't have a dog like this in the real life, but I think as a character it's very interesting, isn't it? It has this like really nice features and stuff like that. So yeah, coming back to your question, I do these studies all the time. When I do this, it depends, but I'm constantly kind of working on this sort of stuff. Like lately, I've been really struggling with feet. Feet is so difficult to sculpt. So you can see like at first I was like, maybe I draw it, maybe I do this, maybe I did that. Then I was doing this. I still haven't sorted it out. I'm still working. This is not what I want to do. Let's see. I had a bunch of a bit more successful feet. Let me see. That was some. Maybe it's some daily. I don't remember exactly, but I did a lot of feet studies, and I'm still doing a lot of those every day. Cool. Let's just open that guy again.
Cool. Hey Jama, what was your method for sculpting clothes again? Do you rig the character with the clothes after that?
Oh yeah. Oh, no, let me show you that. Actually, it's super cool. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me just open. I have a very cool example here. So, I also like part of the idea here that learning is like, for example, I take courses like as much as I teach. I like occasionally when I have time, I take courses. Like there was this recent course I took from Simon Lee. He's a very famous sculptor. I haven't finished it yet, but actually I thought it would be a nice example to show you the cloth sort of workflow. Hold on, let me just open this folder. Oh, where is it? Just a second, guys.
By the way, for the we're doing this as part of the Ukraine fundraiser. So if anyone listening would like to donate, we're raising funds for the humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. So all that money, all the 100% of the funds will be going to helping children, hospitals, helping refugees, that sort of thing. Go to proko.com/Ukraine.
Okay. Just give me a second, guys. So my folders are so messy, so it's hard to find what I want.
Almost at $48,000, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Damn, I don't have this. Maybe it's in my folder. Sorry about that, guys. It's just...
Yeah, no problem.
I found it. Okay. It's a bit larger file, so it takes a while. So yeah, I was working on this guy over here. Yeah, you can see, like, for example, again, the same idea. I'm always like really kind of into movement and all those things. And yeah, with the clove, like, for example, you can see over here, like, I've got a chunk of clay, right? Yeah, you can see, for example, I've got this chunk of clay. And obviously, initially, I just block it out so it looks like some sort of pants, right? But obviously, I want this to be a clove. The kind of the very simple way would be to carry on and start sculpting the cloth. But again, cloth is difficult, right? You definitely you need to know how the cloth behaves, and this comes from my painting background, right? Like when you draw and paint, you sort of study how the folds behave and all that stuff. Let me just remove this color. It's a bit distracting, yeah. But 3D Code actually has very fantastic cloth. Do you call it tool? Yes, it's a tool. So, for example, I can take this part, and then I can use it as it is, but it's nicer if you run like what do you call it? Basically, like create a better topology. So I have it on shortcuts usually. Like you just click on that, and it does this. Basically, what it creates like a nicer topology for this, right? Then, if you go back to sculpting room, over here you have a sort of tool where you can go and tell it to pick from retopo. So what basically happened right now, it picked up that retopo piece of cloth that I created, and then basically you can just like give it some thickness so it looks a bit thicker. Yeah, and then that's it. You just let me just choose this brush. You press start, and yeah, and this becomes your cloth. So you can start moving it around and just get like basically basic, at least like some basic shape, you know. But what is really cool, why I love this cloth tool in 3D Code, you have this gravity control, which basically means like again, like the reason why I'm so interested in creating my sculpts in movement, because movement in a way, like when you create something moving, you need to think what's the next step is moving like for example, depending on this pose, like again, I don't know exactly yet. However, if she was in apex where she moved up and she just about to move down, then all the clothes should be still going up, isn't it? Because she jumped up. Again, if we assume that, like for example, you can start play with the gravity and like maybe make one, and you see how the clove is actually being dragged upwards. You see, this is so cool. Again, let's go with the kind of dramatic version of it. Again, it's wrong. However, you can see the potential, isn't it? Like, and whenever you like it, you can stop it. But basically, that's how I approach the clothing process. So you get all the basic cloth, and again, once you end the simulation, you can convert this to Geo and start sculpting it up and stuff. Again, if you don't like it, you can always go like reset, do it again, you know. And also, you can play with this kind of features of the cloth. Like you can make it rougher, you can make it less like elastic, like more elastic, so it becomes more like silk or more like a very rough cloth and stuff like that. Yeah, it gives you a very solid base. Let me actually open you. This was one of the assignments. I haven't finished it yet because there's so much anatomical features I need to work on. Yeah, like even this one, I like it. Like this one, it's almost like she's wearing like a short, very baggy kind of shorts, you know. And when she jumps, the clothes go up. I might actually go for this. This is really cool. But let me show you the other one. So it's on my other monitor. Hold on. I did this one.
I think this is slightly relevant.
Yeah.
Some Tequila Pencil asks, how important do you think developing a personal style is over being able to be a versatile artist who can do any kind of production work in any style?
Style is not that important unless it's dominating over your sort of design sense. Let's say if you're working on film, obviously you like specifically if we talk about the film work that I work on, obviously if you have like a super strong cartoony style, then this could be a problem, right? So as long as your style is not dominating visually, I think this shouldn't be a problem. That would be the shortest answer. But then again, what happens if you do have a style? Then is it a problem? No, not really. You can basically participate in projects that kind of that could use your style. You know, there's, let's say if you have a very strong stylized sort of look of your works, you can definitely use it on like Pixar films or somewhere else and stuff like that. Again, like when it comes to style, it's always a conscious your conscious decision. You know, you got to choose what you want to do. If you decide to do a film work, then probably you have to sort of tone down your style a little bit, make it more realistic and maybe more less stylized. But then if you want to do the stylized work, then you always can find a job somewhere else as well. Cool. Yeah, this is another example I was still working on, but you can see I'm here. I'm using pretty much the same kind of idea, and you can see how the glove is actually looking pretty cool here. Yeah, it's just reusing the same thing. Another thing that I like about 3D Code, 3D Code is literally, like I mentioned, it's like Photoshop basically. Like for example, let me pick up this this little frog here, right? So the idea, the storytelling here was that this guy is like gathering all these lily flowers, and then obviously this guy eats some of it. But then let's say if I want to work on this character a little bit more, so as I told you, being like a Photoshop, I can, for example, sculpt one area, like for example over here, back. I don't know. Let's just use move to and drag something like this. So this could be. Oh, why is it doing that? Hold on. Okay. So imagine if this was some sort of a scale or something like that. Like I did one of them, and I want this area to be converted into my brush, right? Again, you can go and fine tune it, make it some sort of detail over here, right? Then basically what you can do, you can basically go over here. There's this tool called Copy Clay, and it's basically like Photoshop. You would control, you click on it, and this becomes your stamp. And basically like draw with this. So what happened there? It got cropped because I didn't get the whole thing. So yeah, you can go and clear the data. So now I can go with a bigger brush. Press, yeah, now it captured the whole thing. Yeah, I mean you can do all this stuff in what do you call it? In ZBrush. However, I don't think you can capture like to do this in ZBrush. You need like a VDM brush, which you need to create separately. But here you see you can stamp, because like the difference here is that you have this overhang. So it's not just a brush; it has this kind of overhang over here, which I don't think is achievable in a single click of ZBrush. I might be wrong. So yeah, and you can use it like really quickly, and because you can change, you can even use this as negative as well if you want to. Like if you press Control, you will cut the holes. So that could. Oh, You know, like those some of the frogs, they have these holes on the back. It's very, but you can actually achieve that look very quickly with this. Yeah, you see, like a lot of those little things, like in 3D code, it kind of like fits my mindset. You know, I tend not to overcomplicate things, even though I have all these layers. Like as you saw me doing this, I usually keep things very very simple, like slowly chopping away and doing stuff. Like for example, this guy over here, right? Like if I would do this from scratch, like a wooden plank or something like that, I would basically use this 2D tool, which is basically like I showed you actually how when I was doing the ears, but it's basically like a Photoshop brush. I have my Photoshop brushes imported. Like if you save them as ABR, you can bring them in. Like for example, I used to use this brush a lot. You know, this is like my kind of like one of my favorite Photoshop brushes, and I can bring it in here and use it. Like for example, let's say if I want to create that wooden plank, right? Just do this. So imagine this like was a piece of like a broken wooden plank, right? So you do a little bit of that. But again, like a lot of times when I do these demos, especially for 3D artists, I'm not saying it's not familiar. However, the mindset that I'm using here, I'm approaching this as a 2D artist. You know, like things don't necessarily need to look as a finished kind of. It's not the wooden plank as it is. However, if you look at it from a distance, it does look like a chipped wooden plank, isn't it? And then, for example, all it needs like over here, and you draw like a little knot or something like that, and then you stretch it like this. Boom, and all of a sudden, from a distance, it does look like something, isn't it? So, if I meant to do like a boat out of it, again, I would stretch it a little bit. Merged. Yeah. Yep.
By the way, for anyone tuning in right now, the this entire set of streams is for the Proko Ukraine fundraiser. This entire week we've been streaming artists asking questions and just making art and stuff to support the humanitarian effort in Ukraine. So we're raising money to help feed kids, help hospitals, help refugees, and all that kind of stuff. If you'd like to donate, go to proko.com/Ukraine. And I'm also reading questions from chat to ask Jama as well. One of them just came in. Derek, I have a queue, by the way. But, Jama, do you play any games? If yes, what are your favorites?
Yes, I play the games. I play. Where's my battle.net? So let's bring it over. The only game I play is StarCraft. Like you can see, like this is yeah. I might have other games. Let me see what other games.
I have a Hearthstone on mine.
Do I? No, I don't have.
No, I do.
You have Hearthstone. Yeah. No, I just played. Yeah, I just played. I don't even know what games. I think I have Call of Duty, but I always get killed. So yeah, the only game I play StarCraft. It's just, we have a team of concept artists we keep playing. So anyone fancy joining us, just feel free.
Are you like Grandmaster StarCraft?
No, I'm terrible. I'm Diamond. You know, like I'm not good. I used to be good, but
yeah.
I don't know. There's something here. Like as you get older, you're just not.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's crazy the level of skill and dexterity you need to be really good.
No, I know. It's busy. This these days people are super good. Anyway, so what other tools do I wanted to show you? Yeah, let me just show you. Like for example, again, 2D Paint is fantastic. You know the amount of stuff you can do with it, but also there are some tools which are super interesting. Like let me just. Like for example, let's say what would be a good example for that? I guess. Yeah, because of that voxel technology, like for example, every tool, like swap and for example, what was that?
John Neimeister is in the chat, by the way. I think you guys went to school together with.
Oh yeah, John, man, I haven't heard from you ages. Hope you're doing good.
He says, "I'm terrible on diamond," and he says, "Girl, I'm lucky if I get out of silver."
Oh yeah, that's my story as well. Yeah, like for example, you can create stuff like this. It's just insane. Like for example, if you were doing like water splashes or some sort of like explosion sort of impact stuff. Yeah, again, creatively, I think voxels open a lot of different possibilities. It's just completely different approach from the way you would do it normally. But the rest is pretty simple. Like again, if we go back to the same character we started from, uh, like how any of the characters that I was doing, the important part tools are the tool is definitely dictating the way I do things. However, like all the structural elements, all the bone structures and anatomy, this is something that you have to learn. It's almost like imagine like I watched some of the Stan's tutorials, and he does different things, but in a pretty similar vein. Like it it's not about the brushes or the charcoal you use. It's about the structure and how you like the fundamental knowledge that you have. But again, do I believe the tools affect the way you draw and model and sculpt? Of course. However, in the end, like let's say if you just beginning this journey, I definitely recommend just starting with fundamentals. And I showed you like the way, like I showed you early on, right? Like I always start with uh, I do a lot of studies. I mean, like I constantly do like little sketches here and there, and that combined with my some imaginary work, like design work I'm working on, that makes me a stronger artist, I believe. Cool. Well, there's a lot of other stuff here, but again, guys, if you're curious, just have a look at 3D Code yourself. It's a fantastic program, and this guy's like the ironic thing, I visited them on 1st of February, which was pretty much like 3 weeks before the war started. And I actually talked with Andre last night, and they're doing good. Obviously, they are in Kiev, but still, Ukraine is in a big trouble right now. Cool. I wanted to show you another thing. This is not Blender related. It's in Blender, but it's sort of more Ukraine related. But like I have this company, Big Medium Small, where we create these assets, and half of my team is actually from Ukraine. Fantastic artists, and what we wanted to do, as you know, this plane got destroyed. It's Antonov 225, the biggest plane in the world, used to be. So what we're doing right now, we are remaking this plane in 3D. This is just like a work in progress. It's obviously it's going to be a lot of hard work, but as you can see, our guys are building this kind of guy very carefully, matching the proportions. So this will be available for free as a big, medium, small kit. We just wanted people to take this and maybe create some cool artwork with it, and being a very very beautiful, very peaceful aircraft. I think this could inspire a lot of artists to do some cool artwork. But yeah, we like the idea here. We want this create this like one-to-one digital copy of what was destroyed here. We also want to create like the cockpit and then make the opening here. I'm a big aircraft fan, and this one was one of my favorite aircrafts. So hopefully we'll be able to. It's gonna take some time, but I'm pretty sure we will be. And Nikita, who is himself an Ukrainian artist, he's working on this one. So I asked him to send me a work in progress, and that's what we have. Awesome. Well, guys, I actually don't have much. I think like I'm very used to have to make like a quick demos or presentations. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to go over those.
Yeah. Zhao G asks, "Hey Christian and Jama, question for Jama. If you can magically improve digital sculpting interfaces in any way, what would it be?"
Digital sculpting what interface?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I guess my ideal interface is this, like, and I already showed this to you, right? Like when I work, I tend to work full screen. I would love to everything to be just here, so I just click on buttons, right? Unfortunately, right now I still need to go back to menus. Like I need to click on this and that. So I like Pretty Code. It's quite simple, but it's still obviously a very technical program. There's so much here and there. But my ideal interface is this. There's not much maybe, and that's why VR was very appealing. Because in VR you had so much space around you. You can literally like have 5 free tools that you mainly use, and the rest was just by using your hands and stuff like that. So I would say the kind of to sum it up, my answer would be the minimalistic interface would be the best interface for me. Because again, imagine if you're sculpting something from clay, there are no menus, right? You have a couple of tools in your fingers, so then you can focus purely on just on the creation, on the creative part of it. That would be great to have in digital media as well.
Somebody asks, can you animate with the software?
No, you can't animate with this one. However, like again, when I'm working on this one, in a way, like I told you, like I really love movement, and when you're working on movement is something really hard to capture if you're not thinking in terms of like in terms of a timeline, like if you don't know what's the next frame is going to look like, it is very hard to capture the movement. That's why, like, unfortunately, a lot of work we do turns out to be very stiff, right? It looks like a frozen moment in time. Oh, and in life, we don't have you can have it in photos, but still, photo is just a slice of time, isn't it? It's a slice of moving object. So in a way, like, even though this software doesn't not animate, when I'm working on this stuff, I'm always thinking in terms of movement, basically.
Let's see. Do you paint? And when you do paint, or if you still paint, do you only use traditional media, or is it only CG now?
No, I don't paint traditionally. I tried to do oils when I was in school, but these days, whatever I do is just all full on digital. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. Hey, Jama, do you use 3D coat and big, medium, small asset creation? Like for text? Thank you.
Yeah, we use 3D code. Some of our artists use 3D code. Actually, like the most recent one we're working on, I can't show it to you, unfortunately, but we're working on something really cool. Like we have artists using 3D code, because 3D code also has fantastic texture tools as well. Like if I go to paint mode, which is this, so basically it allows you, let's say you can pick up like a really nice like a copper texture, and then you can start painting over this character. Let me just grab, yeah. So 3D code has some fantastic texture tools, and yes, we do use. I kind of like myself. I tend to use it only for concept work, but I do know 3D code has some really strong painting and texturing tools.
John Nymeister asks, I've used Blender a lot for hard surface. If I want to get an organic sculpting for fun, should I just jump straight into 3D code?
I think so, yes. Again, is it possible to do some of this stuff in Blender? Yes, but it's just painful, like it doesn't. It gets quite slow with high polygon, but also obviously it doesn't have voxels, just like I showed you here. Like that's kind of a very unique feature to 3D code. Also, Adobe Medium and Adobe Modeler, they are voxel based as well. Yeah, voxels are in general, I would say, a very natural way to sculpt things. Again, it's a trade-off. Voxels are slightly, not slightly, they're way heavier, because when you sculpt with voxels, basically, with, like, let me show you very quick to kind of explain you. So voxels is actually, like, if I open this vox slice tool, where is it? It's basically like, you can see that when you sculpt, it's not a hollow object. You see, it's actually an object full of geometry. So that's tool. It's not a tool to show that. It's a tool to kind of for 3D printing, but it's actually, it shows you how the slices of the cross sections of each surface of each volume, and that obviously makes voxels way heavier than surface. So it's a trade-off. Again, like going back to the conversation we started from, it's not like one of those is better than the other one. It's just there's some things that 3D code does way better than Blender and ZBrush. Obviously, there are a lot of things ZBrush does better than 3D code and Blender. Again, in terms of which one, if I would recommend you to sculpt characters, I would say probably it's either 3D code or ZBrush. Blender is not there yet.
Let's see. Rama, how can we edit the shaders in 3D code? I'd like to get more specularity.
Yeah, so for example, now I was painting with the shaders, right? But if you want to, like, let's go specifically to this shader. You right click on this one and you add, like, you have two choices: either edit current objects shader, or edit permanent. Let's just make a current object shader. And over here, you just need to tweak this one. There's this glows map. So like if you just like control this guy over here, I think that's the one that is good. Oh no, hold on. Yeah, I have this shader which has this free, the cavity and the normal and the bulge kind of color and features. So basically, by adjusting that, the gloss is the one that controls. Yeah, you see, like if I want to make it shinier, I control this. If I make it less shinier, I control that. So that's how you do it. But what is interesting, again, we kind of going deeper here, like for people who never use sculpting, probably is a little bit tricky to understand. But like the other cool feature in 3D code, that you can have custom specularity over your models. Like you see over here, it's rougher, and over here it's shinier, because when I paint it on this one, like if we go back to painting, over here I've got the roughness and metallicness kind of options, but I can turn off the shader and I can paint. And hold on, why is it not painting? Oh yeah, because I don't have the brush. Yeah, now you can see as I paint, it's very, very shiny, because I have this roughness on 0 and metallic. And when you export this, it will look exactly like this. It will look, some of these areas will look less shiny. So basically you can, do I have this as a, let me show you. Like I was doing it, like recently I've been playing with this idea to have, obviously all the stuff that I've shown you, it was having this clay look, right? But I was also recently playing with this idea to have almost like a bronze or like metallic look. I don't think this specific character have it in that shader, but oh no, I do. Let me open this for you. So these are some renders I've been doing. Come on. Yeah, so you can see that's the exactly same character, but it has this metallic look, and you can see how you can play with those to get this really nice, interesting ideas. Still not finished, but I'm working on it. I like how, like, you see over here, it looks like, like when the metal is getting heated, it gets this really weird kind of irradiance across it. So
yeah, this is kind of relevant. Jama, are these custom shaders? If so, where can we download them?
Yeah, so the basic one that I was showing to you, if you just get the 3D code, you'll get it with this in this Jama folder. Where was it? Oh man, yeah, over here you have this free shaders, but obviously all the rest of it that I was showing at the beginning of this one, you can find them on my Gumroad, I guess. So if you go over here, yeah, realistic clay shaders. Yeah, you can follow the description, and they're here in the Gumroad. They're not free, unfortunately. I would love to, but I spent so much time making them, so I would appreciate.
Yeah. I highly recommend any Gumroad stuff by Jama. He is a legendary teacher.
I wish. Yeah, I've been playing with the other one I was playing with. It's some sort of a stone texture, also very interesting. I find it very kind of monochromatic right now and uniform, but I guess like if I still haven't finished the model. Once I finish the model, I will start playing with the look of with the look of the shaders and stuff like that. And obviously this is the regular shader.
So question, between 3D Coat and ZBrush, which one is the best performance-wise? I always struggle to go higher voxels with 3D Coat. The ZBrush doesn't hit my PC CPU that hard.
Yes. So again, we just talked about it, isn't it? Like it depends. Voxels, like I guess right now, like I'm not sure when was the last time you tried it out, but 3D Code recently had received massive updates. Like you saw me doing. Again, I have a monster computer, so it is confirmed that. But you saw, like when I was sculpting, it was like, look at this. It's so smooth, isn't it? It's like butter. However, 3D Code recent all the recent kind of developments, they've been heavily relying on GPU. So, but I guess like you as an artist, you gotta have a good GPU anyway, because if you're planning to render stuff and all those things, like it's a good idea to invest into GPUs. And if you have a decent GPU, all the tools will be perfect. The reason why ZBrush has a better performance on regardless of your GPU, because it uses CPU mainly, right? And 3D Code uses GPU. That's why you could potentially you had those performance issues. But again, it's hard to judge for me because I have a monster computer. I rarely get any performance issues. But again, you saw me doing that. Remember, like I can sculpt the character in this resolution as well. It doesn't matter, like, because I slowly increase the resolution just to refine certain areas um, without kind of having a very high res mesh straight away.
Have you looked at any of the new M1 chip-powered computers by Apple? Do you think they're any good?
They might be. I never tried. I had an iMac ages ago. It wasn't as good. So I'm also not sure what's the deal with Mac computers and GPU like NVIDIA cards. I know that there has been some development recently, but I don't know not much about it. I don't know much about it.
Yeah. By the way, I am looking at the chat and answering questions. Anyone that wants to ask a question. Igor asks, question: any hard surface tips on 3D Code?
Yes. So again, this is what voxels allow you to do, which I find very, very interesting. So basically, let's say if we create a hard surface, see if this. Again, like cut is a very great tool to start with hard surface. Also, there was a recent cool feature that they introduced. Like if you use this lasso relaxation, basically what it does, like let's to 0. When you cut things, 3D Code gets this jaggedy edge, which obviously is not nice. Obviously, I exaggerated that a little bit, but still, even with like a very clean cut, you get this weird stuff. But you can do this lasso relaxation and make a cut. Now it's much better. See, now it's kind of clean. That would be the first tip. Obviously, you can also use a nice shader. Like let's say if you're designing something hard surface and it has a metallic look, and possibly a better way to do this would be to use some sort of a metallic shader, which already gives you like a very cool stuff. Then obviously pose tool is a great one to use as well. Again, like you can use, for example, let's say you can do this, and then again, you see like you get this all imperfections, and in a way I love this metallic shader, but again, because it's so perfect, it gets you this like weird stuff. So usually, even if I use the hard surface, do any hard surface stuff, I use this shader, so it doesn't sort of distract me from all the kind of from the design point of it. Another tip I would give you, it would be this remeshing. Let's say if you want to increase the resolution, by default it's set to good, which when like you upres it a little bit, it does smooth out everything. You see, like everything became a little bit smoother, which probably not what you want. So if you want to upres, swap it to linear. So now we'll do the same thing. Oh, I think. So let's do it again. If it's set on to linear, then obviously it's much crisper. You don't lose those details. The one of the strongest features in for hard surface would be this box height. Basically, what box height does, let's say if I cut some sort of, and by the way, you can use like lasso, which is like end-gone lasso, but I generally do this stuff with freehand. So for example, what it does, it kind of hides stuff, right? But then with control, you can unhide stuff. And then, for example, with control again, you can unhide stuff. Let's say over here, I will do a couple of things like this. So this allows you to create stuff like that. But if then, again, everything, I set it up to shortcuts, not shortcuts, but you can obviously do this manually. If you go here, you can objectify hidden volume, which is in my case, I put it on tilde. So when I do this, I press tilde, and now this part is being extracted. You see? So now like I can give it the fancy color. So imagine like this is actually a super interesting approach, because this way you kind of fit things in within each other, and it does a lot of sense. I don't know like if you've seen this before, but like when I was designing this robot for Ready Player One, I pretty much used 3D code as this guy over here. And it's like voxels really work very well with, like, for example, you see over here, this part fits this part exactly, because that's the way I did it, like this part, there's no view of this. I don't have that view, but if you like rotate this glove around and look inside of it, it will have the same pattern, which is super cool. So, and again, I created this pretty much this way. But then there is another, like this was here for a long time, but recently I asked them to introduce another thing, which is basically like you can pick up any tool. Like let's say I pick up 2D tools, I'll put this something that looks a little bit more hard surface, and then you can go over here. You can tell it act like as Vox height. What it basically does when I brush over this geometry, so is it putting a dot? Desync? Oh no, I don't understand. So yes, and then okay, so something got broken. Doesn't work. It's not working. I don't understand. So what happens if we still does that? Anyway, something got broken. Sorry for that, guys. Oh, draw with chunks. Is this the one? No.
Yeah. Somebody's asking the best restaurant to get a kebab.
That's the best what?
The best restaurant to get a kebab.
If you ever come to London, just let me know. I know places, but I want to keep it secret. There's a really nice place in London. Like I know all the places because London is such a great place.
Yeah.
I still want to show this. For some reason, that wasn't working. What's this? Oh my god! I broke 3D code, guys. Officially, it's confirmed.
I don't know if this is related to what you're doing, but Kato asks, would you mind doing the Jama brush breakdown you did in Sweden? Didn't manage to note everything down. Thank you for Sweden. It was super cool to hang out.
Oh yeah, I can do that 100%. So if that's what they're asking for, so basically we talked about. I recently went to Ubisoft Massive Studios, and we were talking about brushes and stuff. There's this kind of famous thing like brushes don't matter and brushes do matter. There's this never-ending conversation. So, and I actually have just like with my 3D code workflow, I like all the choices I make. It's not. I try to stay away from being like, oh, I love this thing. Like that's what I like. That's the only thing I will do. I will always try to find what is the best way to call it. Like find those things that work the best for certain things, and obviously there's no way you can find this one brush that does everything for you. And same for like with my sculpting kind of process. You saw like me doing, like I would try different brushes and kind of combine them all together. Same with brushes. For example, I have all my brushes. Again, you can do everything just with this simple spherical brush, right? Like let's say if you want to create a character, you can do this. However, there's a lot of things missing in this brush, and what is missing here is that like variation in strokes, and there's no direction to this brush. That's why it is possible to do everything with this brush, but it takes way more time. That's why like I have all my brushes lined up here, and depending on what I'm working on, I tend to use different brushes. Like for example, if I'm working on some sort of a design work and I'm playing with this, I kind of I want to make scribbles, right? Like especially when you're designing something, you want to be sort of loose and not worry too much about being precise. And you can do that with like just like round brush, but then the round brush is very strong. When you put some lines, it's very, very precise and almost like a statement. But what you want to make when you're exploring, especially as a designer, you do a lot of scribbly work, right? You want to be able. So what? You want to be able basically to make the scribbles. That's why, like, for example, I use this brush, where this brush eventually it doesn't. It's very big canvas, yes. What's going on? So this brush doesn't allow me actually to draw details. Like, if you can see, like, if I make it small enough, like, look, I try to paint and it doesn't paint anymore. And when I'm using this brush, I'm mainly focusing on big shapes. This really allows me to like clean shapes first, right? Guy with a spear, right? This game I really like. That's why I like. Have came up. And as you can see, like right now, everything is so loose. I like. Is this a part of clothing? I don't know. But it doesn't allow me. But also, it's not silhouette. Like when like this brush is not super kind of opaque enough to create a silhouette. I can still like define some things here and there, but it doesn't allow me to go into full on dark black and white mode. I can still have a little bit of space and play with it. For example, let's say if I have his hand. And then once I have it, like there's either I can swap to a different brush and start refining it. Like let's say if I want like face over here, and that.
I can ask you another question while you're
Yeah.
doing this. Is the quality of your 3D models concepts, are they ready to use in films, or do 3D artists additionally work on them to make vehicles or characters usable for animating?
No, the stuff I do, it's not. No, it's not ready for pipeline. So again, this is the. You can't have like. You have almost like, let's say, if I drop it down here, you have the design aspect of it, right? And then you have technical aspect of it, right? Like when I'm working on something, like do I have to make a conscious choice which one I prioritize first? Like I'm mainly focused on the design part of it, and that's why like I make my I create the workflow that allows me to like to focus on this more than the technical aspect. You have them all together. You possibly can. There are guys who can do both of them at the same time, but still, it's so difficult. Like that's why the reason I do like a very rough sort of almost like sketch like stuff in Pretty Good, because I know if I start refining every single skin spore on a character, it becomes too technical. Like, but I would prefer to shift my things over this area because again, you have a lot of technical people who can do all the fine detailing, but obviously a lot of times it for them it's very difficult to also design things. That's why. But again, it's a conscious choice. Like I would imagine if this was a sort of range of options you have. If you ask me, I'm probably somewhere here, right? But let's say you could be here, or you could be here, or you could be anywhere along those lines. Probably a good designer is, I don't know what's the good proportion here, but I tend to lean towards the design part of it. Also, with the technicality of it, like imagine what I am doing, for example, let's say when I'm working in 3D code, right? What I've done here, from because it's not finished, it's so easy for me to make changes, right? Like let's say the person comes in and says, "Oh, make his beard smaller." Imagine if this was a perfect groomed, sort of like simulated hair. Oh my god, changing stuff takes so much time. But for me, as a painter, as a concept designer, changing this stuff is way easier because I have it very simple. Hopefully that answers your question. Again, going back to brushes very quickly, I think we will have to wrap it up at some point. I have that brush, then I have a set of brushes that allow me, that are more like sort of kind of blocky silhouette brushes. They are also very cool because they also have the sort of the direction as well. When I stroke it like this, like I can tell that this is like a curved surface, right? Like this could be like a simple cylinder, but as we all know, like the simple cylinder could be also your hand, isn't it? Now we know, okay, this is hand, this is sort of a shirt, right? And then you can continue. This could be reapplied to the whole character. Recently, I've been playing a lot with the other brush, which kind of has a combination of all of them. So, and this is, where is it? It's this guy over here. I like this one because it has the feature of the first one that I showed you, where it's very loose. But also, obviously, if you stroke harder, it has the features of the second brush. And if you make it smaller, it has the line work in it. So I really like it. So,
by the way, we can wrap up whenever you would like to.
I'm ready. I'm so that tired, but
Yeah. Again,
the guys kept asking.
Well, I guess I'll close out. So, yeah, thanks again, Jama. Really, really awesome having you. Again, we're doing this to support the effort in Ukraine. We're raising funds for the humanitarian efforts, so hospitals, feeding kids. 100% of the proceeds are going to be going towards that kind of stuff. And go ahead and follow Jama on his social media and check out his educational stuff on Gumroad. He's really a fantastic teacher and artist. And yeah, thanks again for.
No worries. Always a pleasure, especially when it comes to Ukraine. You know my position. I always support people who are in trouble, and yes, Ukraine is in a big trouble right now and needs the support, whatever we can do for them.
Yeah, very kind of you. And we're almost at $48,000. We're about $100 away from it. We're going to try and hit 50,000 before the end of the day. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. And I wish you the very best.
Yeah.